Normally I don't talk a lot about Standard on my channel just because I think Standard has been kind of this weird, abysmal format to be playing, especially like recently in like the last few Standard sets we've had, because things have just been banned out of the format. Things have been super busted. We've had Head and Shoulders like very powerful decks, and then like there's just been other decks that you could play but really weren't that optimal to play, especially if you're grinding like the arena ladder or wanted to play in like the Mythic Championship qualifiers and things like that. So basically with Theros Beyond Death coming out and all these sweet new cards that we can play with, I kind of agree with like a lot of players. Like what beats Nissa Who Shakes the World? Like what, this card is probably the best card you can be playing in Standard. And in this video I'm going to be getting into the deep details of like why this card is very good and why I think a card like Nyx Bloom Ancient is a card that's going to basically be played in the slot where Nissa Who Shakes the World should be played in. So Nissa Who Shakes the World is a 5-mana Planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. Whenever you tap a forest for a mana, add an additional green. +1, put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target non-creature land you control. Untap it, it becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste that's still a land. With a -8, with an emblem, that you get an emblem with lands you control are indestructible. Search your library for any number of forest cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So this card, in and of itself, you know, we saw it when Golo's Field of the Dead decks were in Standard. We've seen it in the Simic ramp decks, the Bant ramp decks. Since War of the Spark has been out, up until late into Throne of Eldraine Standard, that Nissa Who Shakes the World is a very, very powerful Magic card that puts up results in just about any deck that it's played in. And it's probably one of the best like ramp spells, quote unquote, that you can play in the Standard format. So what, like in terms of like what a Planeswalker does, because we know there's a lot of powerful like 3-mana Planeswalkers like Teferi and Narset and Oko when it was in the Standard format. And of course, Oko is dominating all the other Eternal formats. Nissa Who Shakes the World is one that like you need to have an answer for right away. And if you don't, she accelerates how fast the game just snowballs out of control and just buries your opponent if your opponent fails to deal with this card. So obviously, from like top down, like whenever you tap a forest for mana, you add an additional green. When you're playing with cards like Breeding Pool and like Temple Garden or Overgrown Tomb, things like that, or even Stomping Ground, you know, on top of like your basic lands, like those lands will add an additional green whenever you tap them for mana. And we've seen Nissa Who Shakes the World in conjunction with like Hydra Crisis and like Voracious Hydra. If you go into like the Pioneer format, which Voracious Hydra is legal in the Standard format. That, you know, if you just play like a Grazer on 1 and then you play like Euro, which I expect like Euro to be played alongside like Nissa in this new Standard format, that I think like a Simic ramp or like a Bant ramp deck is going to be probably one of the best decks in the format and like one of my early picks for like most busted deck in the Standard format. But that's a video for another day. If you play like any sort of way to just like play your 5-drop on like turn 3 or even turn 4, I think Nissa then just becomes this thing where, like, if your opponent doesn't get it off the board, you win the game. And not just in the way where you need other threats to make this card good, it converts your lands into threats. Like, dealing with a 3/3 Vigilance creature, obviously, like, not only are you getting into the red zone and you're getting aggressive, you're also playing a great amount of defense, because a 3/3 creature is pretty hard to beat through, especially when you just, you know, you end up having a 3/3 on turn 3 or turn 4, and then you have another one like every turn up until you know you get to the ultimate, and it's like you either have 3/3 indestructible vigilance haste elementals, and then you also have a ton of lands put into play. Or you have like 4 or 5, you know, assuming your opponent doesn't kill any of them, obviously. You have 4 or 5, and then you have an emblem where your lands are going to be indestructible, and you're still just going to be able to create more and more 3/3s that are indestructible, vigilance, and haste, that are just going to be able to attack every turn into your opponent's board, and it's up to them to make blocks that either don't let them die or put their creatures in the potential of essentially dying. And with all these new like X spells that we've gotten, like obviously there's an intervention for all the 5 Theros gods, all the 5 monocolored Theros gods that have been spoiled in the Theros Beyond Death set, and essentially like there's a ton of different ways to build a ramp deck where Nissa is just going to put you way over the top and just be this powerful enabler slash engine slash win condition in your deck that like, and she just doesn't, and she does everything that you want to do. Like this card is just so insane, and the fact that like it hasn't, like, it's been on people's like radar to get banned. People have wanted this card to get banned. They wanted Oko to be banned. They wanted Once Upon a Time. You know, green we know is like a very pushed color, and even with all those cards really getting banned out of the standard format, Nissa, who shakes the world, just is utterly like dominating, and probably like one of the top 3, if not the best green card that you can be playing in standard right now, and probably one of the best green planeswalkers we've probably ever seen. You know, definitely makes my list of like top 3 mono green like planeswalkers that you could probably play in Magic. So what are we going on with this? Like what do you want to see from this card? Well, you probably want to play like Hydroid Krasis, Voracious Hydra, big X spells with this card, because not only does like its +1 like turn your lands into threats, it can also just ramp you 2 mana ahead, you know. And what you really want from this deck playing Nissa is you want to play obviously a lot of forest, and with there being a ton of cards that also have like the subtype forest in them that are like lands that produce either green or blue, green or white, green or black, green or red, that you can also just tap a forest for red, and then it adds an additional green. It ends up being like a Karoo land almost, and then being able to untap it with Nissa's +1 and use it to get 2 mana ahead if you don't want to attack with it. This card is just nuts, and I can't speak any more highly of it. And if you are going to be playing in standard in 2020, especially with Theros Beyond Death coming out, use your rare wild cards, pick this up. This card's like $5 or $6 on TCG Player. Pick up 4 copies of this card, because this card is that good and is going to be one of the best planeswalkers slash threats slash enablers that you can play in the standard format, and possibly even the Pioneer format going forward into 2020. And that's my evaluation of Nissa, who shakes the world, going into standard and really future formats where you want to be ramping like super huge and going over the top of your opponent. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like spotlights on different cards, like for standard, modern, Pioneer, I have a ton of other videos, especially like some Theros Beyond Death stuff, and I have a few other card spotlights, like on the card Surgical Extraction for one, and just other cards that are very powerful and people need to be picking up and playing, and their applications, all that fun stuff. I have more videos. Go ahead, check them out. I also do a lot of modern and Pioneer deck techs. Really get into those formats, because those formats are sweet. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of that stuff. Definitely going to be going over more Theros stuff as we get closer. Doing some new stuff in standard once we actually get the set to drop, and probably even doing some arena gameplay too, which would be pretty sweet. Follow me on Twitter. You'll see whenever I post videos. I'm trying to post a video like every day in 2020, so be on the lookout for cool stuff like that. And also consider following my Twitch channel. While I don't play nearly as much Magic or do as much Magic stuff on my Twitch channel as I do my YouTube channel, I do play a lot of like video games and stuff, just like a hangout type place, which I think is pretty sweet and just kind of breaks up the amount of Magic content that I post on my YouTube channel with stuff that is non-Magic related. So I thank you all for watching the video, and I hope you guys stick around and hang out for the next one.